Prairie birthday. During every week from April to September, there are, on average, 10 wild plants coming into first bloom. In June, as many as a dozen species may burst their buds on a single day. No man can heed all of these anniversaries. No man can ignore all of them. He who steps unseeing on May dandelions may be hauled up short by August ragweed pollen. He who ignores the ruddy haze of April elms may skid his car on the fallen corollas of June catalpas. Tell me of what plant birthday a man takes notice, and I shall tell you a good deal about his vocation, his hobbies, his hay fever, and his general level of his ecological education. Every July, I watch eagerly a certain country graveyard as I pass in driving to and from my farm. It is time for a prairie birthday, and in one corner of this graveyard lives a surviving celebrant of that once important event. It is an ordinary graveyard bordered by usual species and studded with the usual pink granite or white marble headstones, each with the usual Sunday bouquet of red or pink geraniums. It is extraordinary only in being triangular instead of square, and in harboring, within the sharp angle of its fence, a pinpoint remnant of the native prairie on which the graveyard was established in the 1840s. Heretofore unreachable by scythe or mower, this yard-square relic of original Wisconsin gives birth each July to a man-high, saucer-sized yellow blooms resembling sunflowers. It is the sole remnant of the plant along the highway, and perhaps the sole remnant of the western half of our country. What 1,000 acres of silphiums look like when they tickled the bellies of the buffalo is a question never again to be answered, and perhaps not even asked. I like the drawing of the bison with the silphiums. This year I found the silphium in first bloom on the 24th of July, a week later than usual. During the last 6 years, the average date was 15th of July. When I passed a graveyard on the 3rd of August, the fence had been removed by a road crew and the silphium cut. It is easy now to predict the future. For a few years, my silphium will try in vain to rise above the mowing machine, and then it will die. With it will die the prairie epoch. The highway department says that 100,000 cars pass yearly over this route during the 3 summer months when silphium is in bloom. In them must ride at least 100,000 people who have taken what is called history, and perhaps 25,000 who have taken what is called botany. Yet I doubt whether a dozen have seen the silphium, and of these hardly one will notice its demise. If I were to tell a preacher of the adjoining church that the road crew has been burning history books in a cemetery under the guise of mowing weeds, he would be amazed and uncomprehending. How could a weed be a book? This is one little episode in the funeral of the native flora, which in turn is one episode in the funeral of the floras of the world. Mechanized man, oblivious of floras, is proud of his progress in cleaning up the landscape on which willy-nilly he must live out his days. It might be wise to prohibit at once all teaching of real botany and real history, lest some future citizen suffer qualms about the floristic price of his good life. think today they call that ecological trauma in the research, but I don't know if they write often about silphium. Thus it comes to pass that farm neighborhoods are good in proportion to poverty of their floras. My own farm was selected for its lack of goodness and its lack of highway. Indeed, my whole neighborhood lies in a backwash of the River Progress. My road is the original wagon track of the pioneers, innocent of grades or gravel, brushings or bulldozers. My neighbors bring a sigh to the county agent. Their fence rows, so unshaven for years on end. Their marshes are neither diked nor drained. As between going fishing and going forward, they prone to prefer fishing. Thus, 1 week ends my floristic standard of living is that of the backwoods, while on weekdays I subsist as best I can on the flora of the university farms, the university campus, and the adjoining suburbs. For a decade I have kept, for a pastime, a record of the wild plant species in first bloom on these two diverse areas. He's got a chart here. Very professorial to keep a chart of species first blooming in each month, and the suburbs and campus and in the backward farm. The total is interesting though. So 120 for the suburbs and campus and 226 in the backyard farm. Okay, continuing on. It is apparent that the backwards farmer's eye is nearly twice as well fed as the eye of the university student or the businessman. Of course, neither sees his flora as yet, as we are confronted by the two alternatives already mentioned. Either ensure the continued blindness of the populace, or examine the question whether we cannot have both progress and plants. The shrinkage of the flora is due to the combination of clean farming, woodlot grazing, and good roads. Each of these necessary changes, of course, requires a large reduction of the acreage available to wild plants. But none of them requires or benefits by the erasure of species from whole farms, townships, and counties. There are idle spots of every farm, and every highway is bordered by an idle strip as long as it is. Keep cow, plow, and mower off these idle spots, and the full native flora, plus dozens of interesting stowaways from foreign parts, could be part of the normal environment of every citizen. The outstanding conservator of the prairie flora, ironically enough, knows little and cares less about such frivolities. It is the railroad with its fenced right-of-way. Many of these railroad fences were erected before the prairie had been plowed. Within these linear reservations, oblivious of cinders, soot, and annual cleanup fire, the prairie flora still splashes its calendar of colors, from the pink shooting star in May to blue aster in October. I have long wished to confront some hard-boiled railroad president with the physical evidence of his soft-heartedness. I have not done so because I haven't met one. The railroads, of course, use flamethrowers and chemical sprays to clear the tracks of weeds. But the cost of such necessary clearance is still too high to extend it much beyond the actual rails. Perhaps further improvements are in the offing. The erasure of a human subspecies is largely painless to us, if we know little enough about it. A dead Chinaman is of little import to us, whose awareness of things Chinese is bounded by the occasional dish of chow mein. We grieve only for what we know. Isn't that sad? But true. We grieve only for what we know. The erasure of the silphium from western Dane County is no cause for grief if one knows it only by a name in a botany book. Silphium first became a personality to me when I tried to dig one up and move to my farm. It was like digging an oak sapling. After half an hour of hot, grimy labor, the root was still enlarging, like a great vertical sweet potato. As far as I know, the silphium root went clear through the bedrock. I got no silphium, but I learned by what elaborate underground stratagems it contrives to weather the prairie droughts. I next planted silphium seeds, which are large, meaty, and taste like sunflower seeds. They came up promptly, but after 5 years of waiting, the seedlings are still juvenile and have not yet borne a flower stalk. Perhaps it takes a decade for a silphium to reach flowering age. How old then was the pet plant in the cemetery? It may have been older than the oldest tombstone, which is dated 1850. Perhaps it watched the fugitive Black Hawk retreat from the Madison Lakes to the Wisconsin River. It stood on the ground of that famous march. Certainly it saw the successive funerals of the local pioneers as they retired, one by one, to their repose beneath the blue stem. I once saw a power shovel while digging a roadside ditch sever the sweet potato root of the silphium plant. The root soon sprouted new leaves, and eventually it again produced a flower stalk. This explains why the plant, which never invades new ground, is nevertheless sometimes seen on recently graded roadsides. Once established, it apparently withstands almost any kind of mutilation except continued grazing, mowing, or plowing. Why does silphium disappear from grazed areas? I once saw a farmer turn his cows into a virgin prairie meadow, previously used only sporadically for mowing wild hay. The cows cropped the silphium on the ground before any other plant was visibly eaten at all. One can imagine that the buffalo once had the same preference for silphium, but he broke no fences to confine his nibblings all summer long to one meadow. In short, the buffalo's pasturing was discontinuous and therefore tolerable to the silphium. It is a kind of providence that has withheld a sense of history from thousands of species of plants and animals that have exterminated each other to build the present world. The same kind of providence now withholds it from us. Few grieve when the last buffalo left Wisconsin, and few will grieve when the last silphium follows him to the lush prairies of the Never Never Land.